We've done square roots before, correct? Okay. Today we're going to talk about, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, I apologize, but there is no easy way to find these. No easy way for this. For example, we all know, like, if the square root of 16 is relatively simple to find because what same number to do to 16 is 4. But when it starts to be bigger numbers like this, you know, the square root of 189, I hope there's a square root of 189. How do you find out what that is? Is there 189? Wait a second, let me do this here. How about 169? Let's try that. Is that right? Sure, why not? Okay, there is no easy way. This is not like a division problem. You can put a number there and just start working it out in some sort of form. There is no other way except for trial and error. In other words, you take a good guess and you see if it works. Okay, now obviously a starting point might be thinking about, well, I know that 10 times 10 is 100, right? So I know it has to be more than 10. And then you could go to the next bigger number. What's 20 times 20?
400.
400, so I know it's a ways away from that. So it's got to be somewhere between 10 and 20. Okay, so you sit there and you just say, okay, well, let's take a shot. Give me more, something between 10 and 20 to try. Andrew?
15.
All right, so I do 15 times 15, and it is 225. Take my word for it, that's too big. So then you go, Julia? Well, then you do 13 times 13. What do you get? 39 and 13. Oh, 169, and it happens to work out. The square root of 169 is 13. Okay, there's no magic formula for it. You just have to sit down. You know, an educated guess is the best you can do, and then you have to work at it from there. Okay. If you had something like, well, I don't know. What give me one? I should know my square roots a little better than this. 625. Okay. If you're taking a guess, is there something that could give you a little bit of a clue as to what number it is? Well, let me just throw it at you. You know this one ends with a 5, okay? And you know that it's the same number times itself. So let's just say if I have 23 times 23, my final number is going to end up being whatever 3 times 3 is, a 9. So I wouldn't start with 23. If I had 26 times 26, the last digit in this answer is going to be the 6, because 6 times 6 is 36. So I wouldn't try that. I would try two numbers that would give me at least an ending number, a digit of 5. So probably having a 5 at the end of it's going to be good. We already did 15 times 15, right? That was 225. That's way too low. So I don't know. I guess the next one we would try is 25 times 25. And 25 times 25 is what? 2, 10, 12, and 50, 625. So there is some stuff that you can do to try to figure out what it is based on that last digit there. Some of them maybe you should know. The square root of 144, yeah, is 12. 13 we just did, 169. How about 14 times 14? Has to end with a 6, right? With 186. What is 14 times 14? 56 and 196. Did I have 196 up there?
You did.
It was 14 times 14, 15 times 15. Now, here is what else is going to happen. Okay, sometimes they don't work out at all. In other words, if I put up here the square root of 21, or just put the square root of 20, what times what gives you 20? Yeah, but it's got to be the same number. Okay, and there isn't a same number. So when they give you this, they'll ask you to state between what two integers. Anybody know what an integer is? Integers are whole numbers, positive and negative whole numbers. Between what two integers would the square root of 20 have to be? So, if I have the square root of 20, you just have to think of the perfect squares. The one higher than or the one lower than. For example, what is the next perfect square after the square root of 20? So you start thinking, what times what gives me same number would be, Ryan?
25.
Right, I know the square root of 25 is 5, and what's this perfect square underneath 20, below 20? Eva?
16.
Square root of 16 is 4, so I know that the square root of 20 has to fall somewhere between 4 and 5. Okay, so between what two integers would this fall? Between 4 and 5. Sometimes they'll ask you, which one do you think it's closer to? Well, is 20 closer to 25 or closer to 16? A little bit closer to 16, so it's probably closer to 4 than it is 5. How about this one? What about the square root of 90? Square root of 90 would have to fall between what two numbers, and why? Now think about what's the perfect square below 90 and the perfect square root above 90. What would that have to be? Somebody out there. Brooke Hollis says,
100.
okay, the square root of 100 is the next bigger one, which is 10. What's the one below it? Ryan?
9.
Right, which is the square root of 81. So you know the square root of 90 has to fall somewhere between 9 and 10. Which one is it probably closer to? Well, it's 9 away from 81 and 10 away from 100, so it's probably a little closer to 9, if you're going to guess. How about this? The square root of 75. What two integers, what two positive or whole numbers do you suppose 75, square root of 75 would fall? Really? Come on, work with me here. Work with me a little bit here. What times what gives you close to 75? David? Start going in your head. 5 times 5, 6 times 6, 7 times 7, 8 times 8, 9 times 9, 10 times 10. I mean, it's just trial and error again. What times what gives you close to 75? Right, 8 times 8 is 64, so the square root of 64 is 8. What times what gives you a little bit bigger than that? Right, which is 81. So the square root of 75 falls somewhere between 8 and 9. Now, something else to remember is this. If they don't work out perfectly, the square root of 75 is what we call this. It is an irrational number. Is it a good or bad thing if somebody calls you irrational? Have you ever heard that? What's the difference between being rational and being irrational if you're a person? Is it better to be rational or irrational? Logan?
It's better to be rational.
Because irrational means, if your parents said you're being irrational, what would they be implying?
Like you don't make sense.
You don't make sense, which is what this means. The square root of 75 is irrational because it is not an exact number. If I punched it, did I do this for you? I think I did. If I take a calculator and I punch the square root of 75 into it, 75 square rooted, you get 8.66025403784436, and that's not the whole thing. That only stopped because my calculator will only go up to that. The square root of 75 is 8 point, a whole bunch of decimals that never, ever, ever, ever stop. Square roots that don't work out are called irrational because for you to actually do it, it looks like pi up there. It's a number, I mean, we can get close to it. For all intents and purposes, Sam, this is 8 point something is close enough for us for right now. But it's irrational because if you really wanted to know exactly what it was, you could never figure it out. ever, in your whole life. And that's why I brought Salvador in as a guest speaker. Now, the square root of 81, this is not irrational because it actually, there is a perfect square to it. It's 9. Okay, 9 is a rational number. It makes sense. It stops. You don't have to worry about it. But if it's a square root that doesn't work, then it's irrational. Pi is irrational because it doesn't end up stopping ever either.